Tonight, over 1 million confirmed cases in America. The pandemic has now killed more Americans than the Vietnam War, and there's growing alarm about our food supply. The president announcing an order to force meatpacking plants to stay open, despite deadly outbreaks at a number of plants. Plus, the vice president under fire for what he didn't do during a visit to the Mayo Clinic. Also, the first antibody test you can take without visiting the doctor, where you can get it, and new hope in the race for a vaccine. Could it be ready by the end of the year? Back in business, some 43 million Americans living in states that have begun to reopen, but elsewhere some defying orders.
There's no end in sight for this. And so, I mean, me personally, I believe it's a constitutional right.
And tonight, dozens of malls planning to reopen. How will they protect you? The packed American Airlines plane, no way to social distance, what the airline is saying. And JetBlue, the first to require all passengers to wear masks. Why aren't the others doing the same? The first dog in America to test positive, what you need to know to protect your pet. And the high-flying salute to first responders, inspiring America.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight, as the number of confirmed coronavirus cases in this country climbs to over 1 million and deaths surpass American losses in the Vietnam War, there are increasing worries about a breakdown of the food chain. The president using his executive authority tonight to order meat and egg processors to keep their plants running, despite many becoming epicenters for the virus. It's yet another looming crisis, even as so much of the nation is trying to emerge from lockdown and return to normal. We have a lot of ground to cover tonight. We start with Blaine Alexander.
Tonight, on the heels of a dire warning from Tyson Foods that the food supply chain is breaking, President Trump is invoking the Defense Production Act, ordering all beef, chicken, pork, and egg facilities to stay open, declaring them critical infrastructure.
We always work with the farmers. There's plenty of supply. There's plenty of, as you know, there's plenty of supply. It's distribution, and we will probably have that today solved. It was a very unique circumstance because of liability.
The president's executive order will also send more protective gear for employees at meat plants, which have been hit hard by COVID-19. More than a dozen going dark as the virus continues to spread among workers. NBC's Gotti Schwartz is in Colorado.
New numbers from a union representing meatpacking employees show that 20 workers have died from COVID-19 nationwide, including 5 from this plant in Greeley, Colorado alone.
4 deaths at a Tyson plant in Camilla, Georgia. Tonight, Edgar Fields, who represents workers at that plant, calls the president's order irresponsible.
Look what's happening around the country where people are dying every day, but yet and still he wants people to go into these facilities where they know people have tested positive.
Another union is also demanding daily testing for meatpacking workers. Now, signs the price you pay for meat is going up. At this market in Chicago, concerns about panic buying.
I think we can get through the next 2 weeks and be okay, but I don't know what's going to happen after that.
The problem? With more plants shut down, farmers are left with too many animals and nowhere to send them, as Carrie Sanders found in Florida.
Ranchers who have seen a 30% drop in cattle sales today cheering the president's decision. Beef, pork, and chicken farmers stressing they never had a shortage. The problem was at the meat processing plants.
Across the country, pork farmers facing the tough possibility of having to euthanize their pigs.
It's a dire situation, both economically and emotionally for us as hog farmers.
The emotional toll that this is going to take on pig farmers is, I can't even put a metric to it.
A cruel irony, food stuck on farms, as so many newly unemployed Americans are lining up at food banks. At the Atlanta Community Food Bank, demand is up more than 30%.
Food banks are there to connect those farmers to those families and to get that great food on the tables.
A crucial link for those who need it most. Blaine Alexander, NBC News, Atlanta.
I'm Miguel Almaguer. Tonight, roughly 43 million people, or about 1 out of every 7 Americans, is beginning to see some sort of return to normality. Diners in Tennessee, bookstores in South Carolina, and shops in Mississippi all opening their doors, many with restrictions, but eager to restart local economies.
Nobody's made any money for 2 months, so They need to get in here and make money.
Today, 10 states, including Colorado and Minnesota, are partially reopened. 7 more, from Florida to Texas to Nevada, have stay-at-home orders expiring in 2 days. 33 states, including the West Coast, Heartland, and much of the East Coast, remain shut down. New York City, the governor says, won't be back to normal anytime soon.
Reopen, but don't increase the number of infected people and don't overwhelm the hospital system.
The rollout to reopening will differ state to state. In Iowa, restaurants can open at 50% capacity. In Mississippi, gyms and salons that can't avoid person-to-person contact are to remain closed. In Tennessee, shoppers can expect temperature checks, enforced mask wearing, and social distancing. But even as the number of U.S. infections soars over 1 million, some California businesses, including this barber shop, will defy state orders and reopen anyway.
There's no end in sight for this. And so, I mean, me personally, I believe it's a constitutional right.
As tens of thousands flock to beaches, a new Washington Post poll says nearly 2 in 3 Americans believe restrictions on most businesses are appropriate. 16% say even more could be done.
If we need to extend, then we need to extend.
Tonight, the growing battle over health and the economy, with both at stake.
Here in California, the governor says we are weeks away from some businesses being able to reopen. But others, like sporting venues, churches, salons, and theaters, may still be months away. Lester?
Miguel Almaguer tonight, thank you. There are significant new developments this evening about testing, the key to reopening safely. One big name announcing a new effort to make its antibody test easier for consumers to get. NBC's Kate Snow has those details.
Lines down the street this morning at City MD clinics in New York for a new blood test that looks for the presence of an antibody that builds up as a person recovers from COVID-19.
I'm just curious if I had it because maybe it means that I could get back to work sooner.
Honestly, I'm almost positive I had it.
Quest Diagnostics is also offering that same antibody test direct to consumers. No need for a doctor's visit. Just go to one of 2,200 locations for a blood draw.
GetQuestTest.com.
People are screened first online to make sure they no longer have symptoms or have been near someone with symptoms for the past 2 weeks.
Have you been exposed to anyone? Yes, my husband. Submit. Oh, this test is not right for you.
I wasn't eligible, but my husband, who had a positive diagnostic test more than a week ago, is.
It's been more than 7 days since my diagnosis.
Results come back in a day or two and will be shared with public health officials to help them track the virus. The results are more accurate than many of the early rapid tests, according to University of Washington researchers who've studied one of the systems also being used by Quest.
This is a great test. One of the main outstanding questions is what level of antibodies do you need to be protected against being reinfected?
Dozens of companies are working on antibody tests, but only 7 are authorized by the FDA.
The vast majority of tests that are on the market right now haven't undergone any formal review, and their reliability really ranges.
Could they do more harm than good?
I think the test could do more harm than good if you have a situation where people go out, get a test, it says they have antibodies to coronavirus, so they might be more likely to engage in activity that would expose them to the virus.
Still, accurate results will certainly help, and doctors encourage those who test positive to look into donating plasma. That could potentially save lives. Kate Snow, NBC News.
Now to the race for a vaccine and some new and promising signs about how soon we might have one. In the search for solutions tonight, Keir Simmons reports on a lab in the forefront of that vital effort.
Tonight, for overstretched health workers, families torn apart, and shuttered businesses, a glimmer of hope. A group of scientists at the UK's Oxford University says a vaccine could be closer than has been predicted, maybe even ready this year. We spoke to them as they prepared for trials.
If you can have a vaccine in the next 6 months, it makes those other measures that many of us are suffering from at the moment, being isolated and not being able to interact, more worthwhile if there's an end in sight. And I think there is.
6 months is much quicker than the time most have warned it will take.
That is going to be at the earliest a year to a year and a half, no matter how fast we go.
The faster timetable, they say, is because their vaccine has been in development for decades in an effort to stop other coronaviruses. Now it has been adjusted for immunity against COVID-19 and tested on 6 monkeys at the Rocky Mountain Laboratories in Montana. After exposure to the virus, they report the monkeys did not get sick. And earlier versions of the vaccine have already been tested in humans.
We have a good idea of what type of immunity it produces.
Meanwhile, manufacturers are getting ready. Millipore-Sigma in Massachusetts telling NBC News they're preparing to scale up production of the vaccine and make it faster. If more trials are successful, the first batches could be ready in Europe by September.
How many doses of vaccine do you think you can make?
We are aiming to make not millions, probably not tens of millions, but ideally hundreds of millions of doses of this vaccine.
Many companies are racing to develop a vaccine. It's crucial that it's effective and safe. That's why experts tonight are urging caution as well as optimism.
All right.
Lester?
Keir Simmons tonight. Thank you. Now to the crisis for small businesses. Hundreds of thousands of them still hoping for help from the new round of federal funding that opened up this week. At the same time, dozens of malls are now set to reopen. But how are they going to protect you? Here's Stephanie Rule.
Businesses are struggling with cities shut down and shopping centers closed. An internal memo from America's largest mall owner obtained by NBC News reveals 49 malls and outlets across the country will begin opening Friday.
May 1st is coming. They've already gone 1 month without rent.
The memo details new social distancing guidelines, limited store hours, and decreased occupancy. Customers will be encouraged to wear masks and pay using contactless payment. Free temperature testing and hand sanitizer will also be available.
The business model will have to be rejiggered for a period of time because safety and security is what matters most to the consumer today.
Meanwhile, the clock is ticking on the second round of the Paycheck Protection Program, which has some new rules, but many of the same problems.
We're sitting here waiting like, I don't know what more we can do.
Technical issues dealt another crushing blow to many of the small business owners trying to get a piece of the $310 billion up for grabs. Erin Moser owns a salon in upstate New York.
I just don't think there will end up being enough to go around.
It took 4 hours, but she finally got her application through. During the last round, some banks said only the applications submitted within the first few minutes were approved. The rest were processed, but had to wait for more funding to become available. Some of the biggest banks had more than 1 million applications totaling $100 billion ready to go when the portal opened this week, all from the backlog that didn't make it through the first round. Now, any loans over $2 million will be audited after several larger companies qualified for multi-million-dollar loans during the last round. Many were later returned, but not before shutting out hundreds of thousands of small businesses. Justin Piazza is trying to save his Arizona restaurants.
It was almost like throwing a bloody steak to a pit of crocodiles. They just gobbled up all that money, and we've been left out with nothing.
And as for those stimulus checks, the IRS says around 90 million Americans already received them. Another 60 million will by the middle of summer. Lester?
Stephanie Rule, thank you. The vice president is facing blowback tonight after a visit to the world-renowned Mayo Clinic in Minnesota and an apparent case of do as I say, not as I do. Kristen Welker is at the White House with details. Kristen, what happened?
Lester, the vice president is on defense after visiting the Mayo Clinic and not wearing a mask, despite the clinic's guidelines that all patients and visitors wear masks. He was apparently the only person there without one. The vice president explained his decision by saying he's tested regularly and negative for coronavirus. He also said not wearing a mask allowed him to thank healthcare workers and, quote, look them in the eye. The Mayo Clinic said it had shared its policy with the vice president's office. Earlier this month, President Trump announced new CDC guidelines recommending wearing a face covering in public when social distancing isn't possible. But Mr. Trump said he didn't plan to do so. The vice president's office had no comment when asked what message his decision sends to everyone else about wearing a mask. Lester.
All right, Kristen Welker at the White House. Thanks. We're back in 60 seconds with the first airline to require all passengers to wear a mask. Why aren't all of them? And new guidelines for keeping your pet safe as the first family dog in America tests positive. Back now with the change in the air, the first airline to require all passengers to wear a mask. And the question, why aren't all of them? Here's Tom Costello.
While airlines report a 95% drop in passenger levels, the middle seat very often open. Some flights do have passengers going with and without masks. The president today suggested boarding procedures could soon change.
We're also setting up a system where we do some testing, and we're working with the airlines on that. Testing on the plane, getting on the planes.
While airlines are deep cleaning their planes, most, not all, require crew members to wear face masks. JetBlue today said it will require passengers to wear masks starting Monday. American says it's considering it. Delta and United recommend passenger masks but don't require them. Southwest doesn't require them of passengers or crew. Several airlines tell NBC News they don't think they can legally require passengers to wear masks, though some aviation attorneys say airlines could easily change their own rules to make it a requirement. Canada already does.
At what point does my health and safety play a role in this too, so that I can come home from an airplane and quarantine for a bit so I feel safe to go back out?
Meanwhile, the nation's hotels are also promising changes. Fewer buffets, more grab-and-go meals, and changes at check-in.
It will be a greater use of digital check-ins so that you use your phone to open your door and you can bypass the front desk.
Medical travel experts say every airline, every hotel will have to change.
They have to learn it's more than just industrial hygienic cleaning protocols and procedures. It's all about continuing to practice social distancing, universal precautions.
Hilton and Airbnb also announcing new cleaning policies to certify that rooms, restaurants, and gyms are safe, hoping to provide peace of mind to travel-weary customers.
Tom Costello tonight. Thank you. There are new guidelines this evening for keeping your pets safe as we get word of the first family dog in America to test positive. Here's Kristen Dahlgren.
When Winston the pug wasn't interested in eating, his family could tell something was wrong.
As a pug owner, you know that's a real sign. And then he had a little bit of a mild cough.
The McLeans were part of an ongoing Duke University study testing households to learn about the virus. 3 of them found out they were positive for COVID-19. So they weren't surprised when researchers told them Winston had it too.
He constantly follows my mom around the house, sleeps in her bed.
Experts say Winston probably got it from his humans, not the other way around. They don't believe people can get it from pets.
As we better understand those transmission dynamics, and particularly in the household, particularly among people, it helps us guide and focus where our intervention should take place.
The researchers at Duke are using their own tests on animals, not taking a commercially available test away from people. The USDA is investigating Winston's results, but last week confirmed 2 house cats in New York had the virus. 8 lions and tigers at the Bronx Zoo also tested positive. Symptoms in pets are similar to humans, including a cough and runny nose. CDC guidelines say to treat pets as you would other human family members. Try to socially distance and keep them away from others who may be infected. Winston's family says he's feeling much better, as are they.
Whatever researchers could learn from us and our animals, we're more than happy to contribute to that.
Sit. Hoping their best friend could be a big help to others, too. Kristen Dahlgren, NBC News.
Up next for us as we continue tonight, our exclusive access to today's spectacular salute to those on the front lines. All right, we're back now with a powerful show of gratitude today for the heroes on the front lines. Here's Gabe Gutierrez.
Through blue sky, in precise, perfect formation, they sliced through weeks of tension.
It's like the first time we've celebrated in 2 months.
Outside some of New York's hardest hit hospitals, rare moments of jubilation, a hard-earned reprieve. At Manhattan's Mount Sinai West, nurse Jenny Drexler has had to help patients say goodbye to loved ones through an iPad.
I've been a critical care nurse for 20 years, September 11th and everything, and I have never in my life seen anything like this.
The Blue Angels and the Thunderbirds had last flown together in 2017. Weeks ago, 8 Thunderbird jets flew over hospitals in Las Vegas. Now, the Navy and the Air Force are banding together for Operation America Strong, honoring frontline workers.
Well, I hope they look up and they have a sense of pride in the capability of this nation.
After gearing up in Florida, the aircraft flew up the eastern seaboard, soaring over New York, New Jersey, and Philadelphia. Flyovers of other cities are planned in the coming weeks, though spectators are encouraged not to congregate like some did today. It may have lasted just a few seconds. But on the front lines,
just to have the acknowledgement from society, from community, is so big for us.
this sight meant maybe some things are finally looking up. Gabe Gutierrez, NBC News, New York.
And boy, was it great to see them fly over today. We appreciate it. Up next, why is toilet paper so hard to find? Another question from some really smart kids. Before we go tonight, we wanted to let you know that our latest installment of Nightly News Kids Edition is now available. In this episode, we'll explain the supply chain and why some of those items you're used to seeing or eating are so hard to find. Plus, staying fit at home, grab some Solo cups and get moving, and why kids need to stay away from their grandparents, at least for right now. Our brand new episode of Nightly News Kids Edition is on the NBC News YouTube page and also NBCnews.com and Peacock. Well, for now, that's Nightly News. I'm Lester Holt. Please take care of yourself and each other. Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.